wait probably one more minute. Okay, I think we'll get started. Welcome to the SIG Network meeting for October 9th, 2025. This meeting abides by the CNCF Code of Conduct, which essentially boils down to be nice to each other. And then we will start with the triage. So let's just go open this guy up. I took a look. There's 3 issues outstanding. We can just go through them one by one. So this first one is support rules for defining when controller replicas become available. It looks like, at least when I was looking at this, it was a request for some sort of like canonical controller that's easy to use to do something with readiness gates. At least that's how I read it, although the requirements don't seem to be specific enough to kind of say for sure that that's all they need. So I put this response down here. So 2 questions came to mind. Is one, are readiness gates sufficient? And it's just that readiness gates are awkward to use. And then 2 is there some sort of easy to use thing with like a better interface? I don't know if others had a chance to look at this. For me, it seemed like the answer is yes. In fact, this is kind of what this person is hinting at. But it would be good to sort of get additional requirements. And then I don't know of any off-the-shelf like readiness gate implementation that has a simpler interface. But again, this like depends on the requirements. Is the person who filed this issue on the call?
So this is a long-standing problem we've had with Kube API Server and OpenShift, where after you do an update, because the API servers get restarted one by one, you end up with 2/3 of the connections ending up on the first API server to reboot, 1/3 ending up on the second, and then none on the third. And then they get distributed evenly from there. So you persistently have way more connections on the first API server than the other 2. And readiness gates wouldn't help with that, because you don't want to mark all 3 of them not ready while you're doing your update, right? So I'll comment on the issue.
The solution the API server has is to reject some of there is a probabilistic thing that rejects some of those, and because once the connection is established, if it's HTTP2, it's forever, as Dan said. So
is that a new thing?
No, it was always there. It's the HTTP2. I will find the link now. So there is a handler that probabilistically says, "Oh, try another time," and well, if it tries another time, the load balancer most probably will balance. I saw some internal bench results on upgrades that kind of improve the situation. You don't match even distribution, but it was quite good. Let me find it and share it.
So Dan, in your example,
go away is the go away is the HTTP2 feature, and the flag is something.
So Dan, in your example, because I read this external traffic, but your example is for the, I don't know what we call internal, external.
I mean, it doesn't matter. As long as you have long-lived connections, which he says in point 1 you do,
Yes.
then, when you reboot the first, or when you restart the first pod, it drops all of its long-lived connections, and so they all then have to reconnect. And so the way that it works, if you restart them in sequence, then you end up with an extremely unbalanced division at the end.
Even in steady state though, because wouldn't you have like n available, then you kill one of them, it would just be distributed amongst the n minus 1.
I wrote this all up in a comment somewhere. I'll have to dig it up.
Okay.
But the issue is that immediately after the last one restarts, you're going to have 0 on that one and lots on the other two, right? And then after that point, 1/3 of connections will go to the first one, 1/3 will go to the second one, 1/3 will go to the third one. So the third API server is always going to be behind the other two because it started with 0, and then after that, connections were divided evenly.
And we don't have
Right, because
we can't try to rectify it in real time. We only know sort of random, right?
Tim,
So
your sound is not working.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems though, but would it so let's say there's some readiness strategy where we prevent, wouldn't that be an outage though? Like the connections need to exist. And then let's say we're like getting rid of pods, and then they basically have to reconnect. Like where would they go if the stuff is not ready? Like would we drop them?
Right. That's why I was saying you don't want to do this with like you could. I think in his situation he's only the reporter is only thinking about startup time, and so if you mark all of the pods not ready until all of the pods have started, then the problem is solved. But I was saying that only work like you don't want to mark the entire service as not ready during an update, and so that the problem comes back in that case.
The main problem here is the protocol layer, right? If the TCP session is forever, right? And the only solution is you put a proxy that understands HTTP2 requests or the protocol request and balance from the proxy to the pods and halt the traffic and understand the backends and disable. But the problem is you are tied to TCP, you don't have any other solution that breaks the connection. Once it is established.
Yeah, so I think this one is interesting, and to me, like the question of if you were talking about a restart, like, and you mark them as unavailable, then how does that work? I understand on the startup case where it's like you had no traffic, right? And then you just kind of hold the readiness until you have like sufficient mass to like go forward. Like that one is like, okay. But if you have an existing service and then you want to wait for some large group to come up, doesn't that even make it even more unbalanced? Because then also Rob has a hand, I just noticed. Because wouldn't you be shunting it to like even a smaller group? Or go ahead, Rob.
No, sorry, I just a selfish request. I've got to drop in 20 minutes, and I think my item on the agenda may take close to that amount of time. Hopefully not, but I don't know. But if there's a way we can cut this short in a couple minutes, and that would be awesome.
Okay, I think Dan, you had some comments, and then I think this one is worth discussing. From a triage perspective, should we accept it?
Sure.
Kind of sounds like
fairly active. Yeah. I never remember which command this is.
/ triage
It's
space.
accepted.
Is it already?
No, that like that accepted instead of accept.
Right.
That one
Yep,
should
there you
work.
Okay. Past tense. All right. Let's just quickly go through the other ones, given Rob's request. So this one,
Antonio
folks are-
responded to this one because there was some stuff that was out of date.
Yeah, so I think
we can do the triage at the end of the block.
okay, let's just skip to Rob's then. Rob, do you want to take the sharing for this one? It's a completely
Sure,
different
yeah,
topic.
that'd be great if you don't mind. I think I need.
Giving you co-host. There you go.
Thanks. I will try and be a good citizen. Let me see if I remember how to even present. It's been a minute. All right, here we go. Yeah, is this the right thing? Hopefully. Yeah. All right. So this is a doc that we've been circulating for a little bit, just trying to gauge interest among the broader community and see if, there's been a lot of discussion around, agentic networking in general is what I'm calling it, but basically trying to, make some Kubernetes APIs that are aware of agents and tools and help provide not better guardrails around the connections between agents and tools. And I have this diagram here that is probably going to seem really tiny, so let me see if I can zoom in a bit. But basically the idea is that there's a lot of lines here. We want to somehow be able to have some policies that describe, well, which agents can talk to which agents and which agents can talk to which tools. And some of those will be, connections coming into a cluster, and some of them will be connections within a cluster, and some of those will be connections going out of a cluster. And my naive idea here is maybe we could, do this all with these kind of gateway-like things, right? So you have this singular gateway-ish implementation that can handle requests, whether they're, all within a cluster, whether they're coming into a cluster, or whether they're going out of a cluster, but it's kind of the same code base. Now, obviously, I would expect these APIs to be something that could be implemented with any variety of architectures. Like if you are, like right now, if you look at Gateway, we have the same APIs that are implemented by basically ingress gateways and meshes and other things like that. I'd hope that same set of people would be able to implement these APIs as well. And the underlying architecture can be wildly different. Like Gateway API, we have Cloud LBs, we have in-cluster proxies, I think we have some bare metal LBs that are provisioned. And then, of course, we have a variety of service meshes. So that's kind of the problem statement. I think there's been a fair amount of interest in collaborating on something in this space. There's been a lot of discussion on this doc. I also plan to present this to Gateway Inference Extension meeting after this one, and then the working group AI Gateway after that one, all today, and also working to bring in some more partners that would be interested in collaborating on some kind of Kubernetes project here. The couple things I'll note, one of the things that I'm suggesting would be very helpful here is, instead of just collaborating on APIs, I think, especially in the early days of this project, it'd be very useful to collaborate on some kind of simple prototype. This prototype would not intend to be, production ready or anything like that, or even the most efficient way to do things. But it would be, an efficient way to prototype. I remember the early days as we were getting started with, I think it was called service APIs at the time, but, the first versions of Gateway API, that went a lot slower than I would have liked, because we spent a bunch of time arguing about the shape of an API. And then I think 4 or 5 different groups went out and implemented in their implementations, got some feedback, and then we all basically had to throw away all that code and start over with Alpha 2, right? And then after Alpha 2, there was basically no appetite to make any breaking changes ever again, because we'd already done it once. We'd already had to throw out 4 or 5 different distinct code bases, and that was enough. And so what I'm suggesting instead here is, especially in the early days as we're prototyping, I think we could both move faster and waste less code if we prototype inline here with just validating that these APIs make sense, that they work, and then we can transition as the APIs become stable to have more production ready implementations across a variety of different vendors, projects, etc. Yeah, so that's the idea. I have some more information below, but let me pause and take questions if there are any.
I have one question. So the proposal is to have a prototype in a repo to start working on these ideas, something people can use and deploy in a cluster.
Yeah. Yes, exactly that. To clarify, this is also a set of APIs, right? So it's prototyping and APIs together, but I would expect the first few releases to have meaningful breaking changes as we figure out what it is exactly that makes sense.
I feel like at this point in our project, doing new APIs without any implementation is not a great idea. Like, we've tried it a few times. It has always turned out to be problematic. And Antonio ends up having to dig us out of those problems. So I think building something, whether we call it prototype or reference implementation, but something that is intentionally not a very rich implementation, seems totally correct.
Cool. I can run through the scope a little bit here as I'm seeing it. I think what I've been hearing most commonly is that if we were going to start anywhere in this, the thing that I've heard most users asking about is, please allow me to just put some guardrails around my agent so it can either not have any egress, or it can have egress to only a subset of tools that I allow it to have access to. So this might be the place that we start, but there's a lot of arrows here. So let me run through a little bit. One, agent developers, basically want to provide ways for people that are developing agents to add some controls around agent to agent, agent to tool, and user to agent communication. And then if you're a tool developer, very similar, adding some guardrails around agent to tool paths, particularly auth-n and auth-z. Which agents can talk to which tools. As a tool developer, which agents do I trust? And then this one is less clear to me right now, but it's possible that we may also want to provide some ways to route to individual tools, some basically MCP aware routing or tool aware routing. But that one I think is probably a little bit later in scope, but we'll see as we get more people involved where this goes exactly. And then the other thing, like you probably saw in this diagram, I have a whole bunch of this is meant to be construction and potential future scope. But at some point, obviously agents can talk to LLMs. So I haven't seen as much demand or interest in this, but at some point this may also need to cover, some guardrails for which agents can talk to which LLMs. Yeah, so I think that's all that's of note here. Any comments, questions? Dan?
Rob, I mentioned elsewhere, but for the room, I think the thing that I really want to see called out most is how this is different from just workloads talking to services, right? Which we already sort of have a model for. And I know we're kind of avoiding the word mesh, but this is basically a mesh style access mode where we
An
have
older version of the document said agent mesh, in fact.
Right. So like we're trying to maybe avoid the word for incendiary reasons, but ultimately that's what we've got. And mesh includes a concept of policy and authorization. And so I just would like to make sure we're really clear so readers of these proposals understand why this isn't just a pod talking to a server.
Yeah, so or go ahead, Leor.
Yeah, I was trying to. I mean, you could relate to the mesh, but like, I was just want to make one comment that a big part of it is, which I think is also the first scope of it, is agents running in Cube talking to something outside of Cube. Like that's very likely to be outside of Cube, right? And then like the all egress stuff, which is going to be central here, whether it's for authorization, whether it's for I'm just like even looking more forward, whether it's for sanitizing that credit card details is not in the agent payload when it requests the tool, whatever, any policy you want. So all the governance and the egress is a big part of it, which I'm not sure we are calling mesh or not. Depends where the tools are running, but yeah.
Yeah, and the point I would say is, yeah, I'd initially, what I had here is I had like an ingress gateway, agent mesh, and an egress gateway, and then I'm like, this is way too confusing. And what I imagine is going to be a common way to implement this, or at least what I would like to do for a simple prototype, is they're all the same gateway. They're all implementing the same APIs. The only difference is basically where they're sitting or what traffic they're intercepting, and maybe it's just everything. And so there are some meshes today that basically are a redirection mechanism to a gateway. That's probably an oversimplification, but I imagine that being one viable architecture here. There are others that are very focused on sidecars. That's also a very viable way to implement this. But I don't want, and then the other point I would say is I think that most, if not all, gateway implementations that exist today could, support these boxes, right? And what they'd be missing is some way to redirect traffic to them. Maybe we provide that, maybe others provide that. I'm not sure yet. But I think this is fundamentally gateway centric, at least in one of the possible architectures here.
So
Dan, you're muted. So yeah, go ahead.
yeah, like so the thing that worries me the most is when you said that LLMs as like a future extension. Like I don't see why any of these gateways need to know anything at all about what any of the pods are doing. Like all they need to know is that like purple pods can talk to these green pods and these other purple pods, and like you don't need to know that some of them are tools and some of them are agents and some of them are LLMs. They're just pods with labels on them, right? And you want to
so
certain rules.
That's absolutely part of it. I agree that we're going to rely on a lot of the fundamentals that already exist. What I would call out is that in the case of tools in particular, the same pod can serve multiple tools. So you may want to allow, one agent to, access the read-only endpoints of this pod, but not the right ones, for example, right?
So there's you want L7 rules, but
yeah,
but still,
yeah.
like designing this API to be in any way AI specific seems like it would be a huge lose for every customer doing anything non-AI related.
So I think it needs to be aware of the so far AI specific protocols that so for example that one use case of read only tool. So one, how do I understand the tool name? It is specific to a protocol. And then how do I understand if this endpoint is read only is not necessarily just it's a GET request versus a put or post request, whatever. Like,
but people have these problems with other protocols as well. Like they want to allow gets but not puts to their HTTP server. They want to allow reads but not writes to their database.
Right, but I'm just saying this is I agree. I'm just saying this is a different protocol than we're used to here. So we would need some call outs for
some new L7 knowledge that we don't
Yeah.
currently have.
Yeah.
Would the right phrasing here be more like JSON RPC request as opposed to MCP request, generic?
That's something we've
Yes, that's been an open discussion. It's worth considering. The feedback I've seen on an issue related to this actually is that MCP adds so much more on top of JSON RPC that we probably do want to be a bit more specific here. But yeah, this would absolutely be the project or whatever to figure out those details. I'm trying not to be too prescriptive right now, other than to say there is a set of problems that feel relatively unique, and I completely agree they layer on top of existing problems. This just adds another element to that, or another couple dimensions.
So Rob, I know you're going to have to drop soon, and I'm going to have to drop soon too. Is there a decision being sought here, or is it just informational? Like, what's the next step?
So, seeking feedback, seeking participation, doing the tour. So the next, going to Gateway Inference, and then work AI Gateway meetings, immediately after this one to discuss this more. So, trying to find more people that are interested in being part of this, and trying to, as far as actually asking for approval, I'll do that via, an email at some point in the coming days if feedback is good. But please, if you have concerns, leave comments on the doc, talk to me, talk to others. I want this to be open discussion and a big tent that gets as many people involved as possible.
Okay. Thanks, Rob. I think we know where to find Rob. Rob, is there a Slack conversation as well, or like how do we continue the conversation? Comment on the doc? Is that the recommendation?
I think comment on the doc is probably the clearest way. There was a thread in AI Gateway working group, but I think that's mostly focused on the overlap between this and AI Gateway, and not so much the rest. So yeah, I think just commenting on the doc is probably the best. Cool. Thanks, everyone.
And with that, I'm going to have to drop off. So thanks, everybody. I'll look for the notes later.
Great. So, Rob, I guess if you stop sharing, does mine pop back up? Oh. Oh, did Rob drop? So the next one on the agenda is Antonio. I think you have network policies on established connections.
Well, I didn't. I was talking with Dan this morning, and I think that this is a good example of prototyping. So we had this discussion. I think that Dan opened it in the network policy API. So the network policy, when you change a network policy, what we found is, at least our implementation and Calico only apply to the to the new connection. Existing connections keeps working. And we were discussing, and we concluded, okay, the expectation is that the user, if apply a network policy, apply to everything. So I started implementing it. It was more complicated than what I thought. And when I think that I have it, I started to, the implementation was flaky, but it was another point that is the one that I want to bring up. when I started to test with other things, I noticed, oh, this is changing the behavior, and this is going to cause a problem if people upgrade to this new version. And then I say, okay, I'm going to feature gate that. And when I started to feature gate, I say, okay, if I put the period to 0, it can mean disable. And then, thank you for reviewing, and that's the good thing of reviewing. Pointed out, okay, 0 in most of the things, when you put duration to 0, means immediate action, not periodic. And then this means, oh, I need to put 2 flags. And then we started to discuss, okay, is this a network policy that you need to implement in different modes, or is an additional feature over the standard network policy? And well, I just wanted to bring this here to understand if other people with network policies see different behaviors, and is the standard behavior to see that only apply to the new connections and not established, and if some people have more ideas on this topic.
So one question based on my ignorance, is there no conformance? Well, first of all, there's no conformance, but is this written down anywhere, what you're supposed to do, or is this sort of an empty space?
Dan, you were the one that started documenting it. So
there's no definition of what the right behavior is in network policy. We were talking about standardizing on one or the other behavior for admin network policy.
Right. So this sounds like a design nit, I guess, that needs to be addressed. I see Nadia has a hand.
Yeah, I don't know if there is a way to do anything that won't break everyone in the network policy field as of now. So we in Open Kubernetes have implemented that in a way that it does apply to all connections, including existing connections. And there are customers that actually rely on that behavior. And they were arguing, which also makes sense, that if they found that there are some problematic connections that shouldn't be allowed in the cluster, all they want to do is create a new network policy or change the existing one and make sure this existing bad connection is interrupted, which is the whole point of like having this security. And that's how it works. And I think we did check a couple times, and I don't remember if we tried to write anything about that. Maybe we also found out that not all implementations work like that, which happens in network policy field. Oh, my sound is really bad.
I can still understand you, but it's has a lot of noise on the line.
Huh. Okay, maybe something's wrong with my mic, sorry. Yeah, but anyway, I think we tried to figure out if we can document that, probably found out that there are different implementations of that, and we can't say anything as of now, so.
But I didn't understand. So OBN breaks existing connections, or does
yes.
not break? Okay, so we have one of each. Okay, it's not what I was worried is that the ecosystem was standard in one implementation. Okay, so it's
right
uncharted territory.
Yeah, so when we started discussing this, we found some did it one way, some did it the other way. And if we were going to standardize, it seemed like I don't know how well people could understand what Nadia was saying, but you know, we do have customers who are like, well, obviously, if I change the policy to block this connection, it ought to block it right away. That's basic security. And it seemed like, yeah, there's an argument for that, and there's no good argument for doing it the other way, where you know the policy doesn't take effect immediately. So we're leaning towards standardizing it in that direction. Under the assumption that it wouldn't be that hard for everybody to implement, which we're now finding out is possibly false.
Interesting.
Okay, so
but wouldn't you also find that people may rely on the coasting behavior, even though it seems bad from a security perspective? Or do we see this as like,
I mean, people might rely
security
on
perspective, like you should never have this, like it's like bad.
So we are never imposing any conformance requirements on network policy v1. Like we might say this is the recommended implementation, but we're not going to say you have to do this and you'll fail if you don't. For admin network policy, people aren't using it yet, or it's not finalized yet. So we can define it as being that. And if that's not what people want, then they can just wait until tomorrow to change their admin network policies or whatever, right?
Yeah, just my 2 cents. It sounds like a reasonable to cut things off, but go ahead, Antonio.
No, my main question is that, because it will depend a lot on how we implement it in Q network policy. If we say, oh, this is the standard behavior, then I need to deal with the upgrades, right? People need to upgrade to the new version. And if they suddenly start to cut connections, assuming I'm able to implement it, is a change in behavior. And that's the thing that worries me. So I don't know if it should be considered as the default behavior or an additional behavior. That's the fundamental question I have.
But Antonio, I'm hearing two things. One is talking about the new stuff, which is an admin network policy. So I think that one, it's at least what I'm hearing from Dan is just like we should just define it. Like that one seems okay. On the network policy side, since it's not defined, like that's mostly a story for your users, I guess.
It's up to the implementers.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but usually
if your users want this behavior, then change it. And if you think your users don't want this behavior, then don't change it. And if you think it should be configurable, then make it configurable, which is probably good for Cube network policy so that we can test it both ways.
I don't want flags, Dan. I don't want flags. And 2 flags is too much. The thing is that the other is going to be feasible. People to use different. It's going to be feasible to decouple network policies from admin network policies from the implementation. I think that we need to talk with at least we have OBN, Calico, and Sirion, because I assume that they are going to use the same policy matching. So making that thing, I don't know. I think that it's an interesting topic. I thought that was going to be simpler, and it's complicated, and I just want to open the discussion. If you have ideas, there is an open issue in Cube network policies and in network policy API, and you can help us there to solve this problem. I'm going to find the links and put in the agenda.
Okay, so I wrote down in the notes, like, I think that seems like the question is like, if you made the behavior more well-defined in the newer API, is that going to trigger, due to implementation details, like basically, I have to do the semantic. Although that again kind of depends on the implementation. So mostly the implementers should chime in on that one. Ricardo.
Did you ever got into the network policy status stuff where the implementation reports the capabilities done? I remember I've seen you on the because I was wondering if this is something that you just want to report, like, hey, this is the way that you do, and users will know, like, eventually GKE behaves on one way, OVN Kubernetes on the other way, but at least you're reporting.
So for admin network policy, the goal is to not have any variation in behavior. Like the fact that we have these variations in network policy is a bug, which we can't fix now, but it's a bug. And then long term, I'm hoping we can replace network policy with a new developer network policy or application network policy that does the same thing but better and is better specified, and then eventually supplants network policy v1, and then everything works.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Dan, because having these like options at the start is too, it's like a, what do they call it, a attractive like danger, basically. Like you should just try not to have it until you can, you cannot get out of it at like in any way.
I'm just too spoiled with the gateway API.
Yeah.
Yeah, gateway API is definitely the counterexample here. Like where we started from a premise of we want to support all of these disparate data planes, and knowing that like that was irreconcilable without kind of the carve out of optionality there and extended functionality.
Okay, Antonio, did this answer your discussion?
No, but well, at least I got clarification that we have different implementation implementing different behaviors. So I was worried that everybody is settling one implementation. So then now we want to switch everyone to the other. It was going to be a mess. But now I'm going to talk to somebody in Sirium. I think that Casey is still in ISO1, right? Okay.
Yes.
I got what I want.
Very much. Okay. Any other thoughts? I'm going to switch back to the triage then and finish that up. Okay, let's go back. Okay, so I think just to wrap up on the one that we had the discussion on, I took our discussion and sort of summarized it here. And Dan, please take a look. I think I captured what you said, but I might have misunderstood something. And then I'm going to move on to the next issue on the list, which is the IPVS.
You're sharing right now.
Oh, am I not sharing? Stop sharing. It says I'm sharing, but let me just stop sharing. Share. No, don't share my. Here. Okay, all right. It's very hard to see if you're sharing or not. So just a quick recap. So this one, I added the discussion. So please comment all the other discussion items. And then I'm going to move on to this one. So IPVS looks like folks, Antonio, Dan, you commented there's some kind of version mismatch. Is the share happening? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to mark this as triage accepted.
I mean, it seems like not a bug, possibly.
Okay. Do we just want to close it after getting a reply?
Yeah, leave it open. We'll look at it again next week.
Okay.
Oh,
or sorry, should I undo this? Delete. How do I triage unaccept? Okay, I'll leave that. Needs triage. Triage. I'll fix this. Jump the gun on that. Okay, so we're going to leave that for triage next cycle and then close it. So I'll just make a note of that. And then the final bug I see in our triage list is this one. So I made a note at the bottom. It's like a very long thread. But from what I can gather, there was a discussion on how to potentially fix if you could figure out what the cluster IP ranges can be identified. And it looks like there's definitely a workaround if you're using core DNS. It's like in a lot of discussion buried in the comment threads above. What do we want to do with this one? It looks like it's just been basically bumped. Thoughts?
This is very old, right?
Yes.
And nobody commented on that.
Oh, it got untriaged by the bot.
I didn't even read it. So what's the question?
Should we? Okay, so there's like our choices, right? Like mark it as triaged, so give it another year. Figure out if we do need to discuss sort of some potential fix, or we could say close it because there's already a workaround given for core DNS, and you know you can use the workaround.
Cluster cider, multi-pod cider, or well, if we go pedantic, is who configures the DNS, and is the DNS part of the Kubernetes configuration? So is this something that we can do here?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, as far as I know, core DNS is considered the net on kubeadm as an example, right? When you are installing.
Yeah,
So
it does, right?
so maybe it is something that you could tag kubeadm folks, but I don't know if there is a solution that we can do here, as an example, code-wise, right? Other than like whatever is configuring core DNS should be, getting the workaround if we think that it's something that should happen.
I don't see any action here. I would close it as not.
Do you want to assign me this one, Bowie, and I can check with kubeadm folks maybe what they think, like if they think that they should be fixing that on kubeadm manifest side, and let the user know. That's a RIKATZ, and it's important.
Okay.
I'll take a look into that one. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then I guess we'll, since you're owning it, we'll just mark it as accepted. Take it off our board.
Yeah,
Accepted.
just so I can confirm if we really want to do something other than like, documenting.
What happened? Oh. Sorry, I'm just gonna make a note of what we just discussed. Okay. All right, and then with that, I think we've reached the end of the issues to triage. So if anyone has any additional topics, let me just check the doc real quick. Going once, twice. All right, I think that concludes the meeting for these 2 weeks. See you next time.
Bye.